Performing Abergavenny is a co-design, co-creation project with various community organisations in Abergavenny and the local council. And this morning we're going to hear about performance, and I'm going to hand over to Professor Sally Mackey, who's going to introduce the session.
Thank you, Valerie. And David Studdert, where are you, David? At the back there was the third member of this project team, research team. David was the research fellow on the team. So yes, I'm Sally Mackey, and I'm a performance scholar and researcher. So I've been working with Val and Dave on some of the performance aspects of this project, and that's what this session is all about. There were many uses of performance in Performing Abergavenny, from small performance acts to a more conventional evening's show production at the town's Borough Theatre. And it's this work, the Borough Theatre work, that we're focusing on here. One of several outputs from the project, co-created with community members. But just to give you a quick flavour of the other forms of performance, there's just a few PowerPoint slides. So, Matt, could you just bring up the first two of the PowerPoints? This was some street artist ethnography a year ago in the town of Abergavenny, and finding out information from the local residents. And then at the very end of the project, we had the picnic at the pool day. And if you just want to flick through those until you get to the duck race, that's lovely. And this was only 2 weeks ago. And in fact, Valerie, Dave, and myself will be talking more about the whole range of projects from Performance Abergavenny at our session tomorrow morning, a follow-on session, embracing some of the larger research questions. This one is, as I say, very much about demonstrating and showing you some of the work that we've been doing on one of the outcomes, the outcome at the Borough Theatre. So there'll be extracts from that production, filmed, and one live one. And then we'll be moving into a discussion, which I'm delighted to say Peter Owen is going to chair. And Peter is from the Welsh Government, and he's head of the arts branch there. Research questions included: what kinds of performance work enhance community cohesion? How can we access hard-to-reach groups and involve them in these projects? Can arts-based performance offer councils and residents pointers towards a new way of relating to each other? And several members of the town council and indeed the county council were in the audience at the Borough Theatre that night. So here's 3 extracts from that performance, and we're going to start with a small inclusive arts group, Platform, which was directed by the group's leader, Becky Kent, part of Monmouthshire Youth Services. It's their view on Abergavenny, and it'll be followed by a brief extract from one of the young performers talking about the work. Matt?
My name is Tom, but this isn't my story. This is someone else's story, who can't be named. The reason why we can't tell you is because it would have repercussions for this person. And so the story begins. I wake up around 12ish because I can't sleep. The reason I can't sleep is because I've got too much on my mind. 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 And I've always had trouble sleeping. Even if I don't have too much on my mind, the street racing outside keeps me up. The constant wheel spins in the car park opposite. Constant engine roars, cars going so fast that they make such a noise when they skid round the corners. I've lost some of my friends to crashes from speed racing. I then go outside to see what's going on and wait. And waiting for something to happen. Because it always does. It could be a drug raid, a fight, an argument, someone getting arrested, or someone getting hurt. There's always one siren or another screaming down the street. There's nothing for me to do in the day. Most people I know pass their time with drugs and alcohol. It makes it really easy to slip into that lifestyle. You can't say no. It's all you see, 24/7. It feels like there's no way out. Most of my day is spent hanging around the street, being witness to anything that decides to erupt. I always feel on edge. And it gets worse at night. Around 9 o'clock, it's like a ghost town. And even though it's quieter than the day, it feels more scary. Always having to watch my back and look over my shoulder. That's Abergavenny to me.
And the next extract is a brief minute of Tom talking about his work in platform for performing Abergavenny.
So I think it's rather important that their voice is heard, and I'm quite honoured to be that mediator. Yeah, by allowing this person's voice to be heard by the community, it then enables these community members in power to then help this person by making the streets more pleasant, improving education, and all round making Abergavenny a nicer place to live, no matter where you live. What it's like for my character in Abergavenny is it's rather hard. All he sees 24/7 is a way of life which is very negative, very horrible, and there is no escape for him. By showing this to the wider community, the council members and other people, they can then hopefully improve his life, allow people a way to escape from this cultural poverty where life has become stagnant and rather negative. This has shown me, this performance, especially the character I play, the fact that it is not as simple as just getting up and leaving. He has his whole family embedded in this. So there is no escape. This is a very exclusive opportunity to get other people's voices heard, and I find it quite lovely the fact we can.
Now going to ask William Gilbert to introduce the next piece of work that was at the Borough Theatre. William is a resident of Abergavenny and handily Director of Theatre. William, you'll need that.
Okay, thanks. I came to Abergavenny about a year ago and discovered there was a project going on called Performing Abergavenny, and as I've spent my whole life as a teacher of performing arts, that seemed like a good thing to get involved with. I met with Sally and she suggested to me that I might like to explore the voices of elders living in community care homes and private residential homes, because their voices were perhaps not as easily accessible to the community as they might be. And in fact, in the past, when I lived in Sussex, I had done quite a bit of work in Sussex care homes doing reminiscence theatre, so it wasn't something I was unfamiliar with. So what you're going to see, everybody knows Abergavenny, was taken from 6 hours of recorded reminiscences in 2 different homes, and I took those reminiscences and from that created a performance that we presented at the Borough Theatre. Okay?
They're closing all the shops now, aren't they?
I try to remember the old money, but it's a job, isn't it?
You'd hardly recognise the place now. When I was first married and moved to Abergavenny, we lived in a flat at the top of Chapel Road. And if I couldn't be bothered to walk into town, I used to phone up and get my shopping delivered. They'd all deliver. The butchers, the grocers, you'd ring them up. And within half an hour, there was your shopping. We had a Labrador, and I used to walk him down into town for the exercise and all the way back up. And we'd be in and out of the shops all day. And nobody ever thought of stopping you because you had a dog.
Seems crazy now, doesn't it?
Do you remember the shop? The grocer's shop? Do you remember? Do you remember? You don't. My father kept that shop. He didn't keep the shop all his life. 36 years.
I don't remember that. No, I don't remember it.
I remember the market now. I remember at Christmas, they'd be feathering the turkeys and the chickens, and they'd put them in a baby's pram and bring them to the market.
The market was much more important in those days. We used to go quite often. I can't remember which day, though. Is it 1 day or 2 days a week? No, I don't know. Strange. It's like living a dream.
I try to remember, but it's a job, isn't it?
It's like living a dream.
Great times.
Do you remember? You don't.
Why do you want to hear about all that?
Born and bred, Prospect Road, Abergavenny. The house I grew up in, 9 Prospect Road, my grandfather owned it. Had it built. It had 3 large bedrooms, and I had a brother Jack and a sister Gwendoline Irene Margaret. 3 children. My father was very musical. He was a bandmaster at the Salvation Army Band. So Jack, my brother, he played in the band, of course. Played saxophone. That's right. It's a long time ago. I played the violin, and my sister, she loved to have a go. She was self-taught on the piano. Yes, and we went to the Sunday school at the Salvation Army as well.
My husband's name was Ernest Charles. They had prefabs in those days, and when we got married, we had a prefab. They were very comfortable, and modern too, of course.
There were the town hall dances. Eddie Tattersall did those. They were terribly well known. Every week they'd put an ad in the paper with the latest bands. I think the Beatles came to one of those in 1966. It was a big feature of the town. Friday night was dance night.
Everybody knows Abergavenny.
We had 2 cinemas as well. Wetherspoons is one of them. Still looks like the Colosseum. It's called the Colosseum. And the other one was what's now the Gateway Church, and that was the Palladium. I think it's called the Palladium. Anyway, we had 2 cinemas, and I used to go quite often, I remember. Sometimes there was a flurry of good films, and we'd be going once a week for about 6 weeks. And then we might have 6 months with nothing much at all. So it went a bit like that.
I've lived in Abergavenny all my life, 104 years. I was a dressmaker, and my husband worked on the railways.
It really upset me when they closed that railway station. It really shocked me. There were 2 railway stations in Abergavenny. One was Monmouth Road, that's still there. The other one was Brecon Road. I think that's a doctor's surgery now. That was the one that went up via Gavilan, Gilwan, Cliddock, and then through the tunnel and up to Bryn Mawr. And then you could get off and get a connection down the valley to Abertillery and so on. And I've often said if I won the European lottery, I'd donate it all to reopen that line.
Years and years ago, that park used to be beautiful. They used to have a gardener there all the time, and it used to be really beautiful. They used to have a little shop there in the park as well, and they'd sell ice creams and rolls and things like that. It's all gone now. And the swimming pool. It's a pity that.
I remember one time being there with my sister, and this little boy got out of the children's pool and fell into the other pool. And, well, I dived in and saved him.
I loved going swimming. I learnt when I was 3 or 4.
Oh, I had great times in those summers. It was 2p to go in. I couldn't swim, but I liked it. I liked to watch them. I didn't go in. I used to take Ruth when she was a girl.
Oh, and the water was really cold. But you were younger then and you didn't notice it.
It was such a highlight of the summer. I loved it. There were 3 pools. There was a lovely deep one that you could dive into, and there was an intermediate one and a toddler's pool. Something for everybody. Oh, it's such a tragedy. I hate swimming. I never go swimming now, but this was different. It was fun. You could bring your picnic and sit beside the pool and eat your picnic.
Everybody knows Abergavenny.
We didn't show the bit which included a lorry full of maggots and lambs. We thought we'd miss that bit out. So yes, that's another... Remember, these are just extracts of some of the items from the Borough Theatre Night performing Abergavenny Voices. Our third extract is a live piece of theatre taken from a number of interviews with those who are also rarely heard or indeed seen, those who work outside the norm, who work through the night. What struck us about these residents was their shifted perspective on life in Abergavenny, very much geared to that nighttime work, as well as their emphasis on the small moments of sociability or microsociality that was so important to them. So Andrea, Jamie and John are here to perform part of Abergavenny Night.
So it's 78 versus 71, so we go to the crucial countdown conundrum.
Norman Price!
Ready? Fingers on the
You've
buzzers.
broken my windows again. Oh, dear me. I'll have to call Fireman Sam about this.
Richard.
Well, do.
Hi,
What's going on here? What?
Hi. Got a 4. Beep, 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 beep,
Boing.
Boing.
Boing. I do an 8-hour shift.
I do a 10-hour shift.
I used to do an 8-hour shift. Now I do a 12-hour shift.
Works for me.
Works for me.
For me. I can do my college work.
I can juggle the childcare with my husband.
And I get to pick my granddaughter up from school.
But for me, I'd never do a night shift if I didn't have to.
And I never get to see my kids. They come in from school when I'm going out on my shift.
And I never get to see my kind. I'm always coming home when they're going there. Hand over, check stuff, and get going.
Hand over, check stuff, get going.
Hands over, check stuff, get going. Oh, there she is.
It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, but babies don't stop for night time, and neither do relatives. Oh, Grandma, please, Grandma, you have to leave.
Oh, we're just going to have a little crunch for a little
I'll call
while.
you as soon as there's any news. It won't be long now, it won't be long, okay? I'll call you as soon as there's news. Wendy, look at you, man. Oh, my goodness me, love. You're doing so well. Now, you keep breathing, Wendy. Now, keep breathing, love. You're doing great. Now, that's right. Hold on now, Wendy.
Okay, just stay alive. I'm here. I'm here.
Come on,
I'm all right.
Come on, put it down. Oh, oh, beautiful. You did so well. Oh, there you are, Wend. Oh, we've been waiting for you. This one time, the father was so exhausted, poor thing. I sent him off to have a cup of tea. Mother and baby were doing fine and resting. So a bit later on, I go into this room. It's like the maternity ward's bathroom. I can't remember why I went in, but oh, my goodness me. I had the shock of my life. This man sat bolt upright in the bath.
It's a boy! It's a girl. It's a girl, of course, it's a girl.
That father had crawled into the bath to have a kip. Oh, well, poor thing. It must be so hard being the father, don't you think?
You see a lot as a night porter. There's always the late ones coming back. The ones who've been drinking, like at a wedding. First thing they do when they get back, and it's after midnight, mind.
We just want one more drink, mate.
There's a couple of drinks.
Just the one, right?
Oh, just a couple of drinks. You'll be all right.
Sometimes it gets a bit noisy. There was just one time, and it was like 2 in the morning, and I said, right, you two have had enough. So you got two choices. Either I kick you out, or you go to bed. All right? There's your choices. Out or bed.
I'll take him to bed then.
So I'm watching them go, not even knowing if they're supposed to be in the same room or not. And they're staggering up the outside staircase. She disappears for a moment.
Hang on, I'm married.
And then, when she's back, her skirt is up round her waist, and bugging me, she's got nothing on underneath. I don't know where to put myself, I'm so embarrassed. Cover yourself up, woman. You see a lot as a night porter.
Things are a lot harder at night. Things get to you more. All right, love, you off now? Yeah. Oh, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, bye.
I was going out to the car at 5 in the morning. It was the end of my shift at A&D reception. There was nobody about, or so I thought. But there was a psych patient in the car park. He came right up into my face. Hey, love, now. Hey, what are you doing outside? You're going to catch you a death of cold. Now, you go inside, all right? Off you go now. There's a good boy. Off you go. I was so scared. All the way home, I kept looking in the back seat. Too many horror movies, I think.
And he came right in and bricked all the windows in reception. We had to be evacuated. Well, the police said he wanted to hurt someone. You were lucky, love. Oh, I'm glad you're home safe.
So was I.
In our care home, sometimes the ladies from the St. David's Foundation Centre come.
Excuse me, which is Mrs. Williams' room, please?
Oh, she's upstairs, first on the left. They'll just sit with someone who's near death in the night. It's a wonderful thing they do. I don't know how they know. I always think they must be such good people to know when it's going to happen like that.
You better come up now. It won't be long. And it's best to have somebody there from the care home.
In a way, it's better at night. The others in the care home, they don't see them, do they? It's better.
Babies don't stop for night time. And neither do relatives.
Twins, yeah.
Oh, come on, Grandma. You can't stay here all night. Come on, you go home. As soon as I hear anything, I'll let you know. I'll give you a call. Okay? Oh, my goodness me.
Of course I am, darling, okay?
Love.
You're doing fantastic.
Oh, gosh, you're doing so well. Look at you now. It won't be long now, Wen. Keep us right. A nice deep breath.
Fantastic,
Nice.
love, okay?
Come on
I'm
now,
right
girl.
there with
Nice
you.
breath.
Okay?
There's a good girl.
That's it,
Now.
girl.
It's not going to be
You're
long.
doing brilliant.
Keep going now, Wen.
Look,
Keep
she
going.
knows what she's
You're doing so well, Wendy. Let's come and put you there, love.
There we go. There we go.
Oh. There's always one or two you don't forget. You think, could I have done something different? It's harder at night. It gets to you more.
Come on then. This work isn't going to do by itself, is it, eh?
Oh, do it.
There we go.
There we go.
How about that then?
Here we go. Oh, get tidied up.
Working nights, you get those moments of sociability. Relationships are a little bit more special when you work a night shift.
I've only got one colleague, but he's got my back.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're in a lift, you talk to the person next to you. You wouldn't usually.
You gossip more.
You tell jokes. It makes the time pass quicker.
There's a lot more chit-chat with night people, a lot more talk on the night shift. Helps keep you active.
And you form close bonds. You muck about more.
They is my second family, the night shift people. We talk about everything. We have problem, we talk. One special shift, and I told her, I learn a lot from you, you know? I mean, to integrate, to get to know to somebody, you have to know the rhythm of life. You have to know the style of life. And I told her, I learn a lot, you know, we have fun. On my birthday. Okay, we go. And I know I told them, on my birthday, I spend it with you, okay? And it's funny, I go to work, bloody hell. No one, he told me happy birthday. And I said, you are idiot people, and I'm sorry I work with you.
Okay, it's your birthday, and you're here.
What do you expect us to do?
But no. It's like at midnight we have break, and I go to the toilet, and I come back, and it's dark. And they have cake.
Happy birthday, mate.
Not huge, but maybe 10-15 minutes. We celebrated my birthday. They is my second family.
It's like everything's more intense on the night shift.
At Christmas time, when I had my pipe, I'd go outside and it'd be pitch black.
I've watched the sunrise come up over the Skirrid.
Oh, it's beautiful in Abergavenny this time of the morning.
You make your way home and it's so quiet. Not a soul about on weekend mornings.
You could drive through the town at 100 miles an hour.
After your night's work in Abergavenny.
And thanks to Heather, who's here, who did all the original interviews with a number of people who work at night in Abergavenny. So we're just going to finish this section, because also created for the evening at the Borough Theatre to celebrate the life and people of the town was a version of 500 Miles that was rewritten for people. It's been up on Facebook for a while, as well as shown at the theatre, and it has, I understand the expression is, gone viral. Not entirely sure what that means, but I gather it's good. So we're going to finish with an extract from 500 Miles.
When I wake up, when the sun is on the town, then I know this is the place where I belong. I can see all the gliders on the hills, and they're shining just like angels in the sun. I was born, and I know that I will die in this town that I call mine. And the people in the streets, you can tell it when you see it in their eyes. I would walk 500 miles to Abergavenny, where I belong, to see my proud and shiny town, to see the place I call my own. They're singers, they are singing, and the young girls, they are dancing in their dreams. And the traders, they are trading, and the teachers are proclaiming their advice. People praying.
It's on the Facebook site, and David's the man to talk to about 500 miles and the mass organisation that was involved in that. So, all the extracts were from one of the outcomes of performing Abergavenny, the more traditional performance outcome at the Borough Theatre, specifically trying to respond to some of those questions through practice, some of the research questions through practical activities. Questions such as how to hear from hard-to-reach members of the community, and so on and so forth. So we're now going to move to the second part of the session. I think I'm right that we started 10 minutes late, so I'm assuming we've got that additional 5-10 minutes at the end of ours. And I'm going to ask Peter Owen to come forward, and Val, Dave, shall we come and join him at the front? Yeah. There was a huge steering group as part of this project, and some of them will be speaking tomorrow at the second half, really, of that session.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come along today and take part in this. And I was certainly incredibly impressed by what I saw there, and it very much chimes with what we, the Welsh Government, are trying to encourage in terms of our strategy for arts and culture. Yes, we support what some view as high-end culture, but for our current minister, probably his two biggest priorities are to get more people involved in actually participating in the arts and culture, and secondly, to try and make a more pronounced link between arts organisations and artists and communities to try and exploit the very rich potential there is for culture to make an impact in terms of alleviating poverty. And many of you will know we just concluded a very big report on that. So it was extremely encouraging to see what's been going on in Abergavenny, and we very much applaud it and would like to see more of it. But really, just perhaps to kick off the conversation, perhaps I could ask you, Val, what do you think the importance of this work has been for the town of Abergavenny?
Thank you, Peter. Well, I think it's been incredibly important for Abergavenny in that we've brought a new way of thinking about the enhancing of community cohesion through arts, humanities and performance. And because we've worked in a co-design, co-creation way, we've actually done it together. And I think that's what's particularly important. We're not a research team who's gone in and said, OK, we're going to do X. But we've tried, as far as we're able, to work with people in the community to develop what seemed to be important to them. And I'm sure William and you will also say more about... Heather will also say more about that because they both live in Abergavenny. But so we wanted to bring together different groups of people in Abergavenny and to work across different kinds of divisions in the town. Divisions of class, of wealth, of poverty, of geography. But also, as Sally's been telling us, we wanted voices to be heard that aren't normally heard. And so I think we'll ask you really to judge whether or not that is beginning to happen. For myself, having seen it once in the theatre and then seeing it again today in a different context, it was very, very moving and really highlighted the beginnings of some of those things. So, we've linked that with other kinds of performative events and festivals, treasure hunts, and so forth, so that, we are beginning to try to involve people across sites. I think that's all I want to say now.
Anybody else who was actively involved here who'd like to sort of comment on that question, what you think the actual impact was on the town? Yeah.
We did it. This is the second project that we've done in Abergavenny. I think both occasions we've used theatre, and on one of them we involved Neve is up the back there, was one of the people, one of the members of the research team. I think we've learned a lot about how the process of involving people, and I think this is the most important thing that I really wanted to emphasise, which is that at every stage of doing these plays, we needed to involve people from the community in allowing them to really designate what the topics were going to be, how they were going to be approached, and to basically be involved in a hands-on way from the beginning to the end. And I think this is by far and away the most crucial aspect of the whole thing. I mean, in some ways, the distinction between high art and the theatre and you know, street art, which a lot of people make, isn't really the most valid distinction. I think the most valid distinction is the manner and the process that's involved in the creation of these acts of theatre. Both the events we've done have been very, in the Borough Theatre, have been very successful. But I think in as well, there was also a lot of performance at the events we went to. You saw some of it earlier at the Bailey Park, and these were things that really in themselves bound people together closer into the notion of what we were trying to do. So I think there's a way in which we should be thinking about this as community art, but I think we need to also think very carefully what those two, where the emphasis lies in those two words. And I think the emphasis has to lie fundamentally upon the word community, rather than the word itself simply justifying an arts program.
Anybody else like to come in on that?
Just say one quick thing. I think we all know that when you're showing work, you tend to show work that you've selected, and therefore you're showing specific items that have worked and have come to fruition and did appear on that night. But I think it's also true to say that when it hasn't been like that at all stages, that we have, of course, run into problems where we haven't been able to gather groups of people together. We haven't heard some of the voices that we would have wished to hear. And I think that's the case in every community arts process there is. You're not quite going to get what you want. And it was very difficult to get the platform piece, and one of the people in it had to be spoken, his words had to be spoken by somebody else who couldn't appear in public because of who he was. It was extremely difficult to get a group of fathers from the estates in North Abergavenny to work with us. We wanted to, but we just didn't manage it. So I think it's also important to say that there were things that so seriously didn't happen as well as things that did. And I think that's also something we have to recognise within it. And also that some people in the audience weren't impressed by some of that work. They didn't like it. There was a complaint in the paper about some of it being miserable, dispiriting. They didn't necessarily want to hear the voices of some of those people who spoke perhaps not so positively about Abergavenny. So I think that's important to say as well. Oh, yes, do, William.
I'll just say a little quick word about something that perhaps you didn't see, which was the front row of the audience for the performances. The reminiscence work that I did in care homes came full circle, because the front row of the audience was the very people who provided those reminiscences. And so for me, that was a completely joined up project, is that I went out into the care homes and sat and talked to these people about their view of Abergavenny, what they felt about Abergavenny, in particular, what they felt about their 104 years of life in Abergavenny, then taking that into the process of creating a theatre piece, then rehearsing that with 4 women from the community, and then performing that back to the community, part of that community being a row of those elders who'd provided the starting point. And in fact, if you talk about connected communities, well, that really is a community that was connected from start, and it came back right to where it began, which for me was very exciting.
Joyful. Yeah, that was joyful. Yeah.
Any thoughts or observations from the audience? What did people feel about?
Hi. Well, to start with, that was amazing. I loved it. I'm a composer and I'm doing something very, very similar in Stoke-on-Trent. And I was just wondering, are you going to take forward the work that Tom from Platform is doing to encourage this young kind of positive attitude?
There's an irony there. There's an irony there, which is that particular funding stream, which is post-16 transport, is it post-16 or 14 to 18? Can't remember. Post-16 transport funding has been cut, of course. And that group have relied on that post-16 funding to get them to Platform, which is actually in USC. So that course, that group, I believe, no longer exists because that funding has been cut. So there are, of course, those kind of issues. As we know, council funding is being cut in so many different ways and impacting in so many different ways. Tom, I think, will continue. I think he will continue with his drama, with his theatre, and there is a lot of support in Abergavenny for youth theatre, but it won't be a Platform.
So the lady at the back, and then I think the lady in the front as well.
Who was it at the back?
Frances Rifkin. I'm an equity activist and professional community theatre worker. I think that we have to look at this in some kind of political context. Firstly, I've done loads of work in communities, and one of the ways I found of getting people together is to have an aim that will change something. And so to do it for the sake of doing it, just to be heard but not listened to, if you know what, I'm not accusing you of that, by the way. I thought there was some lovely stuff there, really lovely. But that's really important for it, because we're in a context where, as you say, massive cuts are taking place. Young men who could be very brilliant theatre people can't get funding. And to divorce the notion of elite art, for example, from the notion of elite funding and deliberate domination, more and more domination by elite arts. In my own union, I'm arguing, and have been for quite a long time, but more now than before, for a focus on community theatre and workshop theatre, and for arguments to take place that the Arts Council should fund things more equally, not take money away from the National Theatre, because that causes nervous breakdowns in great stars, and we don't want that, of course. But to talk about how a proper funding structure for theatre, because we need professionals doing this work and people to be able to become professionals and to do it within their own communities, within other communities. And there is a long tradition, as you know, of the work, which you are, thank goodness, picking up and carrying through. But to take it away from the sort of national and economic context strikes me as more and more dangerous, because we're being not listened to on a rather major scale with the way that arts funding is being cut and with the places where it's ending up. So I would beg you, as part of your developing a strength around this, to think very actively about that and how people might support it too. Thank you.
I think Valerie will pick that up. I'm happy to chat away, as you know, Francis, but I think it'd be interesting to hear from Valerie's perspective.
Well, I mean, I think, as you're saying, the politics of it is really absolutely crucial, but the bit I wanted to pick up was really not so much about arts funding, but about, you said we need to go beyond voices being heard. Absolutely. And one of the ways that we started this whole idea was that in our first phase, these wonderful people also went on the streets of Abergavenny, as you saw from the slides in the beginning, and asked people's views. And one of the views that came up really strongly was about relationship with the council. And how the council never responded, didn't take any notice, etc., etc. And so, one of the things that we particularly wanted to engage with was how could the views of people about the council be heard, because we also, on that theatre night, did some improvisation and a mock the Abergavenny week. So we wanted to develop a kind of work which was based at the bottom and which actually not only spoke to power, but actually attempted to, through our microsocial approach, also to think about how governance might be different and how it might be built on what people actually want and what they can actually do for themselves. So that was a central constituent of our approach. The town, as Sally says, the town council were there and the county council. So the development of a dialogue is really important. Now, how successful we were in that, who knows? But I think there's the beginning of something, and that's all we could say about this project in that sense.
I think the colleague in the front did you have one to raise? Or did I just answer my question? Any other?
Hello. I work for a participatory arts organisation, and our funders require that we work with disadvantaged communities and hard-to-reach people. And I sort of see that you say creating a connected community across divisions of class. So how did you engage with the easy-to-reach communities, people that have got happy, enriched lives? You know, were you able to do that as well as engaging with the hard-to-reach communities?
Well, I could I did the night worker interviews, and so these people were selected on the basis of their profession and the time at which they work. So that really cut across some different class boundaries. And actually we're involved in, there's the Forgotten Abergavenny Facebook page, which is sort of a branch of this larger project. And what's really struck me is the diversity in the people that are so enthusiastic about the same things. You know, they've got very, very similar interests, but they're coming from completely different backgrounds. So we've got some very affluent people, but we've got, all sorts of people from across the community. So there were ways in which that was done.
Can I just add a couple of things to that? You're talking about what you're required to do. The hard to reach group label, the hardest group to reach in Abergavenny is not the people on the estate. It's the middle class commuters who leave home at 6:30 in the morning and get home at 9 o'clock. They're impossible to reach. So I don't particularly like that kind of label. We did the play, I thought the first play that we did up the estate, which packed the theatre out full of people from the estate who'd never been there before, was a stronger political statement for what we were trying to do than this one. And that's nobody's fault. I just think that was the way it worked. But I think the other thing I wanted to say, there was two more things I wanted to say. The first one was this notion of what's political and what's not. I know there's battles about funding, and I know there's guidelines being drawn. I think the involvement of people in the governance of their own space, in their own community, in a simple and direct way, is a highly political statement at the moment. I think that that is what we've tried to do. I think the issue about whether it's left, right, is not so much about that, it's about the question of representation versus direct democracy. And I think everything that we did, as Sally alluded to, drew various criticisms. We tried to involve people from the estate. The more we involved them, the more we were confronted by people who basically felt that somehow they didn't deserve to be involved. This was never quite enunciated like this, but nonetheless, there was quite virulent response from some people. after the platform piece, we did some filming in the foyer during the half-time interval, and one of the councillors made quite an impassioned speech about how we were showing too much of the dark side and things of that nature. The platform group confronted opposition prior to the play about what they were saying and how this would reflect on the council. So, I mean, we took all this as a kind of a pat on the back, you know, and meant that we were doing our job. But I kind of think one of the things that came out of this project was that we need to move beyond labels of left, right. We need to think about this thing in a different way. High art versus low art. I think it's much more about the processes, about who's involved in it, and about what the results are, than about maybe political labels that are 20 or 30 years out of date to me.
Unfortunately, we could do about another 30 minutes, but I think we've got about another 3 minutes. So, I mean, I guess one of the questions that occurs to me is how, on a UK basis, can we encourage more of this kind of activities? Can we persuade both local authorities and also, you know, the various arts councils across the UK to perhaps reprioritise and give a bit more focus to this kind of work? So, just be interested in any very quick observations any of you might have on that. And perhaps we could do a sort of speed comment version, if you could just keep your comments really brief, but so that we can get perhaps contributions from 3 or 4 people. Anybody like to pitch in with an answer to that very difficult question? Perhaps it's too difficult.
I'll pitch in. I think co-design, co-creation, done genuinely, which is not an easy task. It's much easier just to go and make pronouncements, but done genuinely is the key to this whole process.
Completely agree with what Val said about, and what you've just said about making people believe that they can do it for themselves rather than relying on someone else to, unfortunately, I won't go into that, but education system, use your initiative, develop your own creativity.
And that is the middle class academics, because they don't like co-design and co-creation, in my experience.
Lady in the back. I think you should stop using words like disadvantaged and all of that stuff, and not define people by their problem, but by their aspiration, their capacities, their resourcefulness. Please stop using it. I'm trying. And you get caught in it because of funding bodies, I know, and you have to use the jargon. But when we're talking amongst ourselves, let's not.
I think the problems of funding will clearly not go away at the moment, and we recognise the privileged position that we've been in to undertake this work with the Abergavenny community. We believe there will be a legacy in the stand downstairs, the Abergavenny calling site somewhere down in the basement, and tomorrow morning's session gives some more ideas of what that legacy will be, but we can be under no illusion about the current situation, and seeing the cuts and happening across this sector is frightening, as I know that you know, Francis, and I certainly know with London and what's going on there. That said, it has been a rewarding learning experience to be part of performing Abergavenny, but I think that if that's all right by you, Peter, we'll wrap that up now.
Yes, just to finish by thanking everyone once again, particularly our actors. I must say that's, I think, the best simulation of birth by a man that I've ever seen. But no, thank you very much for everyone's contributions, and I really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too.
Thank you.